All right. Welcome to the Art of Renovation Live. I'm your host, Paul Foster of Contact Renovations and Custom Homes. This week, we're talking about electrical and lighting and football. Football, how does that factor in? Well, my guest today is Neil King from Apex Electrical, and he's a retired CFLer, ex-Tiger Cat and Eskimo. And he is also a fantastic electrician who we use regularly in our projects. And we're going to dig into the nuts and bolts of electrical today and things for you to look out for, and some advice how to better plan and make sure that your renovation is a success. So let me get Neil onto the show here. Bear with me for a sec. Hey, Neil.
Hey, how you doing, Paul?
All right. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
It's been all 11 minutes.
Yeah, totally. No, it's great to be on the show. This is there's lots of good things happening on here. So happy to be a part.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. And so today, the goal is to, as usual, try to keep this educational for the viewers so we can help them better plan their renovations. And, and even if they don't have a renovation in the works now, they'll be better prepared as they work towards it. And when they talk to even if they don't live in our city and they can't work with you or I, they at least know some really good questions to ask their general contractor or their electrician and things to look out for along the way to make sure they're actually getting the best end result. And it's being done according to best practice, which are always prerogatives that we work towards. And so there you go. So I guess I should introduce you more officially here. So Neil King, and I'll do this while you're on camera because I know you love it. Usually I do this before I bring you on, actually, so my bad. Anyways, so in 2010, Neil graduated from NAIT, got his journeyman certificate, residential, commercial, new construction and large projects. Is kind of what he trained in. But he wanted to pursue his long-time passion of football. So he enrolled in the business and football program at St. Mary's University and went at it. And then in 2013, he got drafted by the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and he spent 3 years there. They got picked up by the Eskimos in 2016, nowadays referred to as the Elks. And then in 2019, he retired and just went hard at it with Apex Electric. And we met him shortly after that, and he's been doing projects for us ever since. And he does a great job. Someone you can certainly trust and know that he'll bring his best to the table, and he'll look out for you. So I certainly do vouch for Neil over at Apex. And, if you're looking for a Sparky, reach out to Apex. Anyhow.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Every time you do that, man, it's just another year and I just get older and older. And
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate the intro. It's been great. Like I said, ever since we kind of touched base and started working together, it's been great, continuing to build the relationship and do some great work.
Absolutely. And I think, along the way we learn stuff too, right? Like we're both really good at what we do, but technology is always changing and, there's different products out there that are available. So along the way, it's constantly learning what is the best way to do this and what is best practice. And some things change and there's a better way to do things, right? So, or there can be. So let's show a couple of pics here. So bear with me for a sec as I open this thing up. So we're going to show a bit about what makes you tick. So let's start with this. It's your daughter. Tell us a bit about her.
That's the heartbeat right there. First time. She is about 10 and a half months right now. So it's just been an absolute amazing, fatherhood is a whole other level once you kind of get into it. And she's just so happy. She's so laughing and smiley. And it's just like, it's crazy seeing things through her eyes as any parent does. Right. But she's just, every day's just a whole new journey. Right. And it's an amazing journey to share with her.
For sure. Well, congrats. I'm glad, your family started, man. That's great. Get some pictures here in no particular order, I suppose, but here you go. Welcome to the gun show.
That's the one right there. We were chatting with this right before. That would have been even, I think it was 2013, 14. We just won the East final to go to the Grey Cup.
Wow.
So that was crazy moment, crazy memories. You know, to be in those moments and to have those experiences, and yeah, it's incredible to look back at. And there's another guy, we call him 007, that guy right there. So he's the one that's kind of taught us everything, and just that hard work mentality where you don't, you know, you find solutions and you continue to work hard and pound pavement, and good things will happen.
That's right. For those that don't know, this is Neil's dad. He's a fine man. I've met him, no doubt. Good man. Here's look at this double king. What's the story here?
So my brother and I, we come from a football family. My dad and my grandpa actually was a professional soccer player in England, so there's a little bit of a kind of history in it. But my brother and I kind of played football together really ever since almost bantam. He's 2 years older than me, so we crossed paths in the Edmonton Wildcats. We went out to St. Mary's together. Always kind of played with each other. It wasn't until I went over to Hamilton that I actually got to smash him up a little bit on opposing teams. But then I was able to come back, and like I said, we played 3 years together. He was the long snapper for the Edmonton Eskimos, Edmonton Elks now for, you know, 9 years, and he recently just retired this year. So he had an incredible career, and you know, taught me a lot of things leading up into professional sports, and just sort of the mentality it takes to be able to survive in a pretty hostile environment.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
sounds
but it's
like
pretty
contracting.
Cool. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, yeah, a couple more rapid fire shots here. Oh, that's not the one I'm trying to show. I had one of your wife on here, but I think maybe it must have got missed here.
Slipped through.
All right. Well, I'll have to go looking for that one here. Give me a sec. So, you know, one thing I guess I'll note, and, you know, why I thought I'd bring up the football today, and I know that it's part of your past, and, you know, it's part of what makes you tick and who you are. And so that's what makes people interesting, is what are they into outside of what they do professionally. But I would say that, like, the work ethic that you developed by being a high level athlete, I think I see that, you know, applied now within your electrical contracting business. So, you know, I guess tell me a little bit about some of the, you know, the parallels there between your business, how it runs, what you're up against, and what you encountered as a CFL player.
Yeah, for sure. It is definitely, there's a lot of transitions. There's a lot of things that made me a good football player, which now makes me a good electrician and business owner for sure. And I think one of the biggest things is just details when it comes down to it. You know, football is, once you get into that level, you know, you got your playbook that's a dictionary thick, and there's checks, and depending on formations, there's so many movements, and you have to know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to have success. So I think that kind of gets instilled in me pretty early, where it's about the details early. And another thing is it was very accountable, professional football. If you make a mistake, it's a touchdown and it's on you. You know what I mean? So I think I kind of thrived in that environment, and just understanding what you're doing, being confident in what you're doing. I think that's huge nowadays, being able to make those decisions, and communication. I think when I played football, I was the safety for the Eskimos, and that was kind of my position in the CFL. So you're really like kind of the defensive captain of the team when you're coordinating. So you're putting people in the right place to have success. On the field, it happens very fast, but you have to be able to react accordingly. And I think now that's kind of just transitioned into my business, where you know, you got to be set up and you got to be in the right spot, and you know, details matter. I think that's the biggest thing. So yeah, those are a couple of things for sure.
For sure. I see we got Safapedia has tuned in here, and he's comments, love that, details and accountability all day long. And it's so true. One thing I guess I notice within our projects, I really approach it as it takes a team to get this project done, right? So I'm assembling a team of subcontractors. I have in-house staff. We have, you know, third-party designers, and we have a client. And together we need to collaboratively work towards, ultimately, I guess, a touchdown, right? We want to make sure that at the end of this, we go for the win. And I see it a lot, I guess, in you, is the way that you bring a team-based mindset to the project. What can I do to help move this along? What can I do to help make sure that the next trade after me is set up for success, right? And on the flip side, I see a lot of trades that come in that really are, self-serving, and they want to do their job well, but they don't consider how what they do might impact someone else. So, there's lots of good electricians out there for sure, in all the different trades, but I really value those that come with that team mindset. And that's basically how we're successful in our projects, is we make sure that the team we've, put together works together. And that's key. And you make that part easy. So I'm going to give you a high five for that one.
I appreciate it. It's always fun coming onto your guys' job sites because they're clean, they're organized. You know what you're doing. If you got questions, you either look in the book or you text the people who are in kind of control of the job, and you get answers right away. So we've seen both sides of the story, when it's not what you want and what you're hoping, and it can get kind of frustrating. And I think that's just the core values of Contact, and I want to make sure those are core values of Apex. And awesome. It's definitely good jobs to kind of be on, and man, it's always fun.
Yeah, well, the feeling's mutual. All right, so for anybody just tuning in, this is the Art of Renovation Live. I'm your host, Paul Foster of Contact Renovations, and I have Neil from Apex Electrical on the show today. We are talking about electrical and lighting, and we're going to get into now what it takes, like where to start, what it takes to get that excellent end result. And everything looks pretty, and I'll share my screen here with you, and we'll show you kind of something where you're going to start off. This is what you're hoping for. So here you go. You want a nice kitchen that's well lit, and this is the end result you're aiming for. So it starts a long time before you put in those fixtures. And, in this image, not very complex lighting wise. We've got a LED panel light, or otherwise known as a pot lighting grid. We've got 4 pendant lights. We have power and lighting in the range hood. And in this particular kitchen, there was almost no under cabinets or no upper cabinets. So there's no under cabinet lighting, but still your grid is critical to make sure that you've got everything roughed in the right place. So let me show you where that all starts. And, I guess here, I'll go right back. I'll go right to where it starts. Bear with me here as I crack open a picture again. It really takes a good plan, and the plan starts off pretty nitty gritty. So there you go. This is putting together the electrical schematic, or in this case, a lighting plan, as to where you want your lights, how you want them switched, where you want control of things, where do you want 3-way control. So, one switch on either end of a room controls the same fixture. And so it starts with a sketch. And I think this one might have been, maybe this was you, Neil. I'm not too sure, but
it was. I think it was. Yeah.
So it starts with this little sketch, right? And then it evolves. Once we kind of confirm roughly what we want for lighting and light switch placement, then we get into, it comes back to the shop, and now we pump it into a grid, and we show the exact clearances that we want and spans between, the light fixtures themselves, and exactly where you're going to want to have each device. So this is like a critical stage. And I think a lot of people kind of blow through this and go, we'll figure it out on the fly on site. And it's really important here for us. And this is kind of threefold. One is for us to know, what's the best way to light it. The second thing comes into, is the client happy with the layout? And, we always give an allowance for a certain number of lights be included. And at this stage, we really start to confirm now exactly how we're going to light the space. So, it's for us to know what to propose to the client, to confirm with the client what they want, and then it goes to the trades. And this impacts, everything from the framers to the electrician to the drywall crew. So it's really important to know where you're going to put it and not get stuck trying to figure it out on the fly. Wrong direction here. So from there, we start taking this plan and we lay it out now on site and go, okay, how are we going to rough it in? And it gets really important when you think about where you want each device to make sure it's in the right location, because once we get drywall up, there's no real going back without creating more work for the drywaller. And the worst case scenario is you figure out something's in the wrong place after you're at like final paint. And now we're opening up ceilings or walls again to try and adjust something. And we've seen it where, backsplash tiles coming off because the electrical box is too low, and it can be a real nightmare. So spend time on this for sure. And I'm kind of going backwards in these pictures here. Bear with me. I'm going to just clean this up a little bit. So, if for example, that last pic I showed quickly there, if you think you want floating shelves with some lights in them, well, we need Neil to rough in his wire to the perfect spot so that after countertop is like cabinets are in, countertops installed, backsplash tile is done, everything's done, shelves get put in, and then Neil comes in to wire in the lighting, connect the lights. If it's in the wrong place at that point, like we've got a fairly major problem.
It's
right?
a problem.
So,
yeah, it's a problem. I'm usually one of the first ones in and one of the last ones to leave projects, right?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. And I think so that's kind of key for you within, deciding what you want. And I'll give you another example here. Here's a fireplace chase. Okay, so this is for an electric fireplace that we did. And you can see in this image here, we've got it's a raceway, which is that white pipe, which is the same thing as a built-in vacuum pipe. And we run that raceway there so that when they put their TV above the fireplace, they can pull all their cables and cords over down to the the left side. In this case, to plug it in if needed, you could maybe have your, whatever it's going to be, your PVR is going to be there, your PlayStation, whatever you need. You're not going to have wires exposed on the surface, right? So a lot of planning has to go in how you're going to wire this. And like, what would you say are some of the most common challenges you run into with the fireplace and raceway layouts?
I see this so much. I get so many questions because people obviously they don't like the cables, right? And it's super standard. There's no TV plugs up high. Most people mount their TVs on the wall now, so there's got to be a plug behind that TV. Otherwise, you have the cord down and plugging into a wall outlet, right? It's the same thing with your speaker cables, with your HDMI cables now. So just like in this photo, we coordinate with the client and we decide, okay, you want to have your media center to the left side. You can have those raceways and those those cords hidden, because it is a problem. Like with fireplaces, there's so much backing. You can't fish without opening up drywall. You can't fish a wire up and left and right. Like it's, especially if it's an exterior wall, then we're dealing with vapor barrier and insulation, and you got to seal that up properly. So it's kind of one of those things that it's about doing it early and understanding kind of what you want to do and where things are going to go. Because people always ask me, hey, can I get a plug up here? It's like, well, you can, but it's more than you think is involved in it.
For sure, especially if you don't catch it, before drywall, right?
Totally.
So, so there's just an example there. Bear with me. Okay, so here is, in actually that kitchen wiring diagram we showed earlier, this is the same kitchen. So this is after drywall, and you can see where things are roughed in now. And we're getting into taping now on this project. It's actually a job that's underway right now. And in this case, we have a pot lighting grid we want to put in. This home did have asbestos in the drywall compound and in the ceiling texture. So we did go through some abatement here. And also to be able to simplify the pot lighting rough in and install, we actually sucked out all the insulation from the attic. And that makes life a lot easier for everybody to come in, cut the holes where we need them, pull the wire where you want them. You have access then from the attic. And
staple all the wires. It makes a big difference. Just accessibility is huge in my world, right?
Absolutely. And then also on the flip side of that, we can then properly install a vapor barrier or repair it, right? Whereas you're trying to, cut holes, fish in, you're swimming through insulation up there. It's really hard to do a good job with the vapor barrier once you're done. So in this case, now everything's sucked out. We have clear line of sight to the vapor barrier. It can be taped up. and repaired as needed. In some cases, we'll actually spray foam the backside of the ceiling, which serves as a vapor barrier before we actually blow in. So depends on the project.
And you can see on this one where the pot lights used to be and where the new ones are. So just the little details. This one, the whole kitchen flipped, right? So like, if you don't regrid and do those early steps, it just kind of throws a little sour candy in at the end of the job. Absolutely. When the lighting's not where it wants to be, where it should be.
Yeah. And like we've talked about this on the show before, our average kitchens that we do here, we're in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, they're about somewhere in that $60,000 to $70,000 range are our average kitchens. We do a bunch a year that are 100,000 plus, and we do a handful that are under 40K. And often we talk to clients, they're like, well, why is your quote more than this other guy? And I'm like, well, look at the scope. What's included? Are there lighting changes included? Because in this particular image you see here, maybe you can see kind of in between the two windows towards the rear, there used to be a wall that divided a dining room from the kitchen. And we also took out a wall that divided the dining room from the living room. So the old lighting layout, sure, you could have used it, but nothing would have been centered. You would have had dark spots and shadows everywhere. So we redid the entire grid, right? So it's a matter of like doing it properly so that you don't end up with a brand new kitchen and it's poorly lit and you can't stand it. And, to go back after the fact and retrofit lighting in at that point would be far more expensive than just doing it up front, right? So, look what's included, right?
Yeah, it's the numbers don't always tell the story, right? I think is the biggest thing. So it's about
it's all about the scope doc and understanding what you're getting. And if you're not too sure, you need to ask those good questions, right? So it's part of why we're here. So here's an example of some floating shelves that we've installed in a project, and we want these things lit just for a nice little accent. So you can see here we've got them. We had them roughed in early. We've taped on the wall where our tile is going to sit. We have a little inlay going in here, and they're roughed in. They're test fit before we get too far, right? Actually, I'll go dig up while we're on that image, I'll go find the picture of the next one kind of in the process here. Okay, so here's that same set of shelves now. Now they've been stained. We have the tile in place. We know our wiring's good. We already pre-tested it and pre-fit it. And, you're getting one step closer to having that great end result. And here is the end result. Now we've got this beautiful little accent. It's well lit, nice little tile detail. And, the amount of planning that goes behind a feature like this is significant. So a lot of people ask, oh, how much for those shelves? So this is like probably a $2,000 touch. And because the amount of planning and design that goes into it, the complexity of the tile work, these are custom made shelves that are made to take a lighting fixture. We have the electrician coming in, twice just to test fit this stuff for us. So, these little things these are like the feather in the cap on a project where it really helps them stand out, but people don't often understand why they become expensive.
There's a lot of work that goes into those little details, right? Absolutely. And when you're dealing with multiple trades and timing, and it's for sure, it's not always as simple as it looks. It looks amazing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we're talking about kitchens. So we'll go back to this picture here while it opens up. So one thing to consider then becomes when we come in to renovate a kitchen, when we go this far, anytime you expose, like you demo the backsplash tile and you take the drywall off with it and you've exposed the circuits for the backsplash, tell us a bit about the chain of events that triggers by having exposed the circuitry and what our city requires.
Yeah, so as soon as you kind of get into this type of scope where you are starting to open things up, you have to bring everything up to code, electrically, plumbing, all that sorts of stuff. Electrically speaking, the codes have changed a lot since most of these houses have been renovated. A lot of these are, original homes whenever they were built in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. The codes have still changed. So the old school, just to, a couple small details, the first things I look at is counter plugs. The old school way was to have split 15 amp receptacles on your counter. Now the current code is to have 20 amp. So you have to have 20 amp GFI plugs. A lot of the biggest things is the stoves and these induction ovens is one thing. You usually have like a standard 30 amp, obviously 240 volt for an oven, but as soon as you bring it up to a 40 amp or a 50 amp, that changes the gauge of wire. So we have to prep for that. We have to pull in new, we have to pull out the old, pull in new. When it comes to dedicated circuits, a lot of it's changed. I hear all the time where people, they have a kettle on and they turn the microwave on and boom, circuit pops. Or the heater and the toaster, or however it is, right? But you have a couple appliances on in the kitchen because it's always a hot spot in terms of a draw for power. Then circuits are popping. So you need dedicated, the current codes now are dedicated microwave, dishwasher, fridge. You got to have your dedicated counter plugs, hood vent. There's a whole bunch of codes to help prevent that, because once breakers start popping, you can't really change it, and it's very hard to change. We'll just say that.
Right.
It's I get calls quite a bit where it's just bringing up to a second floor, a couple circuits. So they only had one bedroom, one circuit for the whole second floor, and the AC unit themselves pops the circuit, right?
Yeah. It can be far more than a nuisance too, right? I mean, it can be a safety issue if light circuits start to pop. Suddenly you're in the bathtub and who knows what, right? I mean, something pops.
And some of these old panels too, like, when circuits are popping, they're kind of, obviously you're overloading the circuit and it's popping, it's working the way it's supposed to. That being said, you're still overloading the circuit, right? So that's not a good thing. But the scary thing is some of these old panels is they don't pop. They don't break. Like the breaker doesn't pop. It doesn't shut off. So you're overheating and you're overworking, overstressing the wire, and that's how fires happen. So it's definitely, electrical is one of those things where it can go from good to bad to real bad real quick.
Yeah, we actually a couple of years ago we had a client who had an electrical fire, and we ended up having to refinish their entire home. Like, their house got gutted, and it was an eye opener for them. It turned out to be it was a faulty breaker, but caused the fire. Right.
There you go.
And
it's scary. It happens though. These old panels. I come across them quite a bit because they're all over the city. But for sure, they're scary. So
the reason I brought this picture up, this is kitchen is in a project we did a couple years ago. It's in a home from the 1920s, and we reconfigured this kitchen. And so in the end, we had to modify the electrical locations. We had to run a gas line in, and we were lucky that this house actually has an unfinished basement below, and there was a crawl space underneath this kitchen. So it was actually quite easy for us to rewire it. But in the end, it can be a real challenge if you're in a home with a finished basement, and we now need to bring dedicated circuits over for maybe your new appliance, or we need to run new circuits over for your backsplash plugs to make them code compliant. And you're in a finished basement, and let's say your kitchen is on the polar opposite end of the house from your panel. So if you consider the cost of running new wire from the panel across that finished basement, well, how are we going to do that? If you don't have a T-bar or suspended ceiling, we have to now start cutting drywall open and fishing wires across. And it's very time consuming, and it can get expensive on repairs. And it's something to consider because everybody wants this, new kitchen reno. And often what we'll do if we're in a situation where we can see that, holy smokes, it's going to be a lot of work to run circuits over here. And as long as it's not an issue for safety, as far as, grandfathering through some of the existing circuits and the way it's laid out, then we make sure that we don't expose the circuit. And if you don't tear open the drywall and expose it, then it can be grandfathered through and left alone. And really, you need to lean heavily on your electrician at that point to confirm that it's safe to do so. I would never let the homeowner just decide, leave them. From my perspective, if I look at it and consider it to be unsafe, it's a deal breaker for me. If they want us to leave that behind, I can't accept that level of liability or responsibility for there being an issue. So we would insist that it be done, upgraded to code, to current code, so that everybody can sleep easily knowing that everyone's safe in the house, right? So
For sure. You can see on this one, I'll just point out, there's that little USB plug at the end of the counter there too. Those are those are something that's just little kind of special things that you can do if thought out properly, because there's still got to be a GFI protecting that. But at the end of those are just little things that we can think about and we can do. You know, adding USB ports and just power locations.
That's right. I mean, it's all the little attention to detail items, right? USB port at the end of in the peninsula gable, you know, lighting in the floating shelves, right? Under cabinet lighting. None of those things are needed. You don't have to do that, and it will add money to your project, but that is what makes this stand out as a great little kitchen. This is a small kitchen. There's not a lot of cabinets in it. This wasn't terribly expensive because of it's not a lot of countertop, not a lot of cabinet, but it was just, make it look really nice and make sure that the layout makes good sense and it's functional, right? So
yeah.
Look at a couple other pictures here. So, a couple things I want to talk about on this one. So here we have a gas cooktop, and so we have our range hood obviously above it. We have under cabinet lighting and upper cabinet lighting in this image. So in the under cabinet lighting, it's just straight up white under cabinet lighting, very much task orientated lighting. And as you can see in the upper cabinet lighting, that's an RGBK system. So that can be any combination of colors you'd like. Happens to be kind of in that blue look right now, but it's a nice little detail of, you want to change your theme of your home based on the season or holiday. It's a nice way to do it. In Neil's house, it would be green and gold over there for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's and those are cool. Like just the products themselves, right? You can get under cabinets right now. I'm doing one on another house where it's you can have blue, white. You can have smart lighting under cabinet systems, right? So it's kind of knowing within the market kind of what there is. You can get super crisp lighting like this. You can get smart home lighting, right? So it's kind of all about what you want. The industry's come very far away, especially these last handful of years in terms of just products and what you're able to do, I think, which is, fun part of the trade.
Absolutely. We had a question here from Alyssa Fessick asking if those are gemstone lights for the inside. Something similar, Alyssa. We'll get back to you on this. We're going to talk about exterior lighting a little bit later in the show. Before we get to that, I want to move on and just talk about range hoods for a second. We talked about this on the last show with Kevin from Acclaimed Heating, Cooling, and Furnace Cleaning. And so with range hoods now, depending on the CFM, so the draw of air that it will suck out of your kitchen, these often need to be interlocked now with your furnace, which is something that your electrician needs to be aware of being part of the scope, right? And what that means by being interlocked is that ultimately, when you turn on the range hood, it will signal your furnace fan to turn on. So it begins to draw fresh air into the home, right? Because there's so much air getting sucked out that range hood that you don't want to get in a position where it starts sucking dirty air back up into the living spaces. So just a quick note to add there.
Yeah, and those are always important, details. We've talked about that a whole bunch. I think that's kind of the theme of the show, right? If you don't have that, it makes a big difference. And those are things that matter, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And now also the city inspectors are looking for this stuff now, right? What's the CFM on the range hood? And I mean, it's a real challenge in newer homes that are so airtight. You crank on that 600 CFM range hood, that home's so airtight, it's going to start pulling air from all these nooks and crannies. Not like in your older homes where there's so much airflow through these old window and door systems, or the way that, things aren't sealed as well, that it becomes a little bit less of a challenge. And lots of the new homes will have makeup air systems in them and HRVs and whatnot that help to manage some of that. So we'll talk a little bit about a couple of good picture, I guess. So nice little vanity, right? You can see in this image, we've got backsplash plugs, 3 of them along the backsplash, and they clear the mirrors nicely. We've got 3 wall sconces installed. Those things needed to be laser accurately installed early, because when it came time to finish this off, we had these custom mirrors that were ordered. They were not ordered after electrical was roughed in. These were ordered in advance. Electricians had to rough this in to make sure it all fit. So you can imagine the amount of planning that would go into getting this end result. And I'll pull up a pic here that will kind of show a bit of that process. Bear with me here.
There's so many things. Roughing in bathrooms, just there's so many details in the backsplashes and switches.
Absolutely.
And if you have like a lip on top of your countertop on the backsplash, you know what I mean? It's like you can run into troubles with just cover plates fitting, stuff like that, right? And that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't have that picture I was hoping. I just wanted to show the rough in shot, and it showed like just the wires hanging out the wall. And you know, at that point, you need to be able to envision what's coming. Look at the plan and make sure, are these roughed in the right place? As we mentioned earlier, if they're not, that's a big problem later, especially when you're in a situation where you've got a whole bunch of wall tile in place. Kind of same idea.
To move those is a serious problem done after drywall, to be honest, right? Because it's, even if it's an exterior wall, it's even worse, or it's even harder, I should say, right? Because it's there's just a lot going on exterior walls, and you can't move tile very easily, right?
Right. Yeah, no kidding. I had a couple of shots I wanted to show here, but for some reason they didn't pull in. But we did run recently together, and we put Shushugi ban on the bathroom, on the vanity wall. And if you don't know what Shushugi ban is, it's basically a wood that's been burnt. It's a Japanese process, and really beautiful, beautiful finish. And it's expensive, right? So we installed this stuff after electrical was roughed in, and it's just a matter of, boy, if there was something in the wrong place in that circumstance, it would be a very painful change for the contractor. So, we're very careful about making sure it's all done on the up and up. And, it all comes back to where we started this show, is talking about the plan, making sure you've got a good plan. It's laid out, it's clear, and everyone can follow that plan to make sure we get to the end. And, it's a success. So
it's what the client wants, right? At the end of the day, and they're happy and thankful for, having a great renovation, because they can be very stressful. Renovations aren't easy, and people are putting a lot of money into this stuff, and, it means a lot. So it's nice to, find contractors that understand that and, take that into consideration.
Take the time, right?
Yeah,
make the time to do it right. And that's key.
Yeah.
We got a few comments here. Sifopedia says, "Oh, thanks. Now my wife wants a new kitchen." Great. Yeah. Tough times for those guys. They're living in Costa Rica right now, living the dream. So good for them. It's my buddy over at Sifopedia. Alicia Wheeler's asking what planning goes into not having an outlet. What planning goes into not having an outlet on your kitchen backsplash? Oh, I see what you're saying. Here, I'll pull up a picture. Thought there was some wordplay going on there for a second. So so this is something that let's pull this picture up here. We did in a project a little while ago. So we don't have any receptacles in this backsplash, right? And if you look up, you'll see they're on the underside of the upper cabinet. So in some places, you're not allowed to do this by code. And in this case, we had the chief inspector okay this for us. And the reason we did this is all about the aesthetics. This is a custom tile that we had shipped in from overseas. It's a metal product. And we didn't want to have this thing all butchered up with plugs in the backsplash. You don't want to look at that. You want to see this feature tile. So we moved them into the underside of the upper cabinets, but that required us to build our cabinet boxes in a very different way, to have the void at the bottom to be able to accept, electrical box. So, again, once you're installing these into the underside of a cabinet, you don't have much room for error either, because if something goes sideways, that's an expensive little finished cabinet panel we have to replace. So again, to answer your question, Alicia, a lot goes into it. It's, very, very precise plan that comes out for the electrical. It goes to the cabinet maker and mill worker. And then again, test fitting and making sure it's all going to fit nicely. And then also, like, we have a certain code. Like, what's the code? What's the requirement between backsplash receptacles? What is it again, the span?
between backsplash receptacles.
Yeah, doesn't need to be every 0.9 meters, something like that. We have to have a backsplash plug. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So
you're allowed for your backsplashes, you have to have, so per 20 amps, you have 2 plugs.
Yeah.
Right. So you definitely want to have more, you know.
Yeah. So there's a minimum amount that you have to install, and then you need to think about how you plan to use the space, right? In this kitchen, underneath that coffee maker, we have a pop-up appliance lift in there. So we want to make sure that we had power available. So you can see where that coffee maker is plugged in right now in this picture. To the left of that is another plug, because we wanted to make sure we had enough there to power multiple devices without having to put a splitter on them, which just looks stupid. In a job like this, you want to make sure you plan it out. So anyways, so yes, a lot goes into planning something like this. So good question, Alicia. Okay. So what should we talk about next here? We talk about rough-ins and planning. I guess we'll talk a bit about, I guess we kind of got into layout already, right? Talked a bit about accent lighting, task lighting. So let's talk a bit about, let's go back to this plan for a minute. Holy smokes, it's 1:45. Well, nice thing about being on YouTube now, there's no time limit. So if you want to keep rambling with me, you can, but I'm sure have a job site to get to. But I'm going to pull up this picture real fast.
Yeah, do you have that one picture, the funny picture?
Oh, you want to get into some of those? Here, we'll show you some electrical fails.
Yeah, those are always funny.
Yeah, so here's kind of some in the planning side of thing you might want to consider. So, you go through the effort to put this beautiful little decorative detail around where the light's going to go, and then it's installed beside it. So I don't know. This brings a tear to my eye. So I don't know what happened here. I'm assuming either they put that, I forget what that thing's called. It's not a medallion, but there's a term for that. Anybody knows? Please comment it. But you can see right now the light fixture is centered in front of the window, at least from this perspective, right? So why that thing got installed the way it is, I do not know. Here's another example of it. Big, long lead over to where you want the light installed.
You can do that. It looks awful. You can do that if you want. All power to you.
You sure can. Awful. Yeah, you could also duct tape an extension cord to your ceiling too if you wanted. But I would say just plan it properly in the beginning. Here's a great one for planning. So I like this picture for multiple reasons, and you might not, and if you don't, I'm sorry. But either this was someone's idea, and this was definitely planned, or it was like the perfect accident. And I think that's where, a good plan comes into place, consider how your fixtures are going to shine light. Where will the shadows be cast, right? Where will there be the dark areas, right? And what might it look like? If the prerogative wasn't a large set of breasts on your ceiling, then someone's probably upset about this.
Crazy.
Here's kind of a worst case scenario when it comes to some wiring. This is not what you want to see, obviously.
Yeah, that's scary stuff.
Yeah, so be careful. I mean, mistakes happen, but one thing we found over the years is definitely if you have a good plan, there's fewer odds of making a mistake, right? So,
and even with just food for thought, like AC units and hot tubs and stuff like that, you got to make sure you have a disconnect outside. There's one that I had, just had to do a service call. They reconnect the hot tub, and the disconnect was inside the house. And it's just like, well, if the house is locked and the homeowner's not home, no one can actually service this. And so that's part of the reason. And you need to have a quick location in case something like that picture happens, right? So,
absolutely. And it can't be too close. Can't be able to reach it from the hot tub for obvious reasons.
Yeah. But lots of location code rules, right? Things to think about when dealing with electricity.
Yeah, definitely. I'll bring up this gemstone light image only because Alyssa asked about it earlier. Alyssa also confirms that decorative circle around that light is called the medallion. So thanks, Alyssa, for looking that up for me. So gemstone lights. So this is kind of a new LED exterior lighting system that's available, and it can give you something permanent. It's more than
Yeah.
Christmas lighting. It tends to look pretty Christmassy in this image. But what are your thoughts on this stuff, Neil?
Yeah, for sure. This is probably one of the coolest products, if not the coolest product that we install here with Apex. They sell really easy. Like the hot market is always Halloween and Christmas because people want Halloween lights and Christmas lights. But they're so much more than that. They are permanent under soffit lighting, so we cut them in. They're custom cut, custom installed. We color match the screws to your soffit. So there's no color that we can't find and match the track. It's all controlled through an app on your phone. So you have hundreds of presets. If you're an NHL, NFL, if you're a Disney fan, if you like Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day, there's colors for every single day of the year. To be honest,
yeah, and you can program these with your music too. Right. I've seen that before too. I have some on home on my fireplace. I don't use that feature, but you can totally, I've seen it before Christmas. We have kind of these neighborhoods where they do these big Christmas shows, and they'll have like music playing out front and the lights like flashing to the beat. It's a neat thing.
It's a pretty cool system. It can be as simple as you want it to be. There's a lot of preset downloads. Or there's also, like, if you're super techie, you can program each individual bulb to be blue while the other ones are green, while that one is yellow, kind of thing, right? So it can go as deep down you want the rabbit hole in terms of programming and making your own design. It's a pretty cool system. And like I said, they're permanent. They'll last. They have a 20-year warranty, I think, or something like that. So it's a great product. It's very discreet.
Yeah,
it's
saves you a ton of time on your ladder.
There you
Saves
go.
you 2 trips up the ladder twice a year for sure.
Yeah, and there's people that you put lights up, and if you're on the south side and your lights are catching lots of UV rays, they're start deteriorating and they don't work well, and then you're going up there every year, and it's just like, just call us. We can put up a very discreet, permanent system that will solve all your problems.
Yeah, true enough. All right. So if anybody is tuning in, this is the Art of Renovation Live. I'm your host, Paul Foster, and I'm talking with Neil from Apex Electric. And we're talking about exterior lighting options now, a little bit to do with your soffits, your decks, your stairs, and all this. I'll go through a few pictures here and show, the impact that lighting can have on your project, especially on your exterior. Interior is obvious. You need it's very task specific, and you get decorative lighting, but in this exterior stuff, really, it can just be such a game changer on how your house presents, the feel outside, the ambiance, and also for safety and security as well. And in this image, you'll see that there's soffit lighting, right? And they got them spaced around each window panel there in that little build out. And then we've got riser lighting, which looks great, but also, makes sure you can see the stairs, right? So if you're at nighttime, it's dark out. If you didn't have these lights on, it'd be a little bit of a gamble. And if, you're not seeing straight, this could be a hazard, right? So the lights sure come in handy in that regard. Again, here's one Neil sent me over the other day. And, again, this is a nice little pergola.
So this one was interesting. Yeah, like this one was super interesting. This was just last weekend, actually. If you kind of look on some of the posts, the two to the right, those are actually trailer plugs. So they have a bunch of 30 amp trailer plugs, trailers to the right-hand side. And we had to dig a trench and relocate from a power box that was about 90 feet away. So we had to run tech cable. And then eventually they're going to have like a kitchen kind of stainless steel shelf. And they want some plugs, which all have to be GFI'd. For like coffee pots and stuff like that. We added a switch and a switched receptacle at the bottom, so the lights run off the switch and they're plugged in. So there's like just so many unique things on this job that was really cool, and they were just really, really happy with it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean the lighting again, it just it makes it like such a more welcoming space, and then you can use it also into the evening, into nighttime. And like we have a pergola back behind our house, and it's lit. Similarly, and it's such a nice place, I mean the lighting, it's nice and warm lighting, and it's really inviting, and something to consider for sure. Here's kind of a different take on exterior lighting. So this was a job we did a few years back, and we have concrete stairs, and we did all new stucco in this house, and a whole new exterior. And just the lighting is so key as far as not only making the house stand out and increase your curb appeal, but also again your safety. So in this sense, we have this lighting in these concrete steps, which again, trust me, it requires a pretty good game plan up front when you're doing your forming to make sure you run your conduit over to the right place so you have your lighting where you're going to want it, right? So we've lit each landing in this case instead of each riser, and that way when you're coming down these icy steps, you know where you are. And then also, this house really, it looks great from the street, right? Just the natural lighting inside, it's very warm, and then the bit of lighting we did on the outside as well, makes a big difference. Here we get more into some more deck and backyard lighting. You can see the difference it makes. Even just here, they're hanging some lights between the trees. Again, this is obviously not in Canada, but it's slick. Again, it just really makes the space inviting.
Yeah, it pops, right? It kind of just, it's a cherry on top, I feel like, with a lot of this stuff. And it's hard to install after if it's too late, right? Once boards are up and things are framed, it's like, well, you kind of got to take things apart to put stuff,
That's right. And again, like you can do it in different ways, like these strip lights are really nice. They fully light the step. Whereas, you can put little small little kind of puck lights in the risers, and it just creates a more very, very specific task light to light that step in in at least one area to see where it is. This, I like the look of this. It's slick. You can see they did some little deck lighting in front of each of those metallic planters, so it casts a really cool reflection off there. And they must have a light on in the hot tub right now too, and they have some lighting up in between the bushes shining upwards. So again, lighting can be used for far more than task lighting. It also can really create a really beautiful overall look. Again, here's another great one that, can see the impact the lighting has on this space, right? Otherwise it's beautiful space regardless, but very deliberate planning here as far as where they put the lights and what they're casting shadows, and what they're lighting, right? So
makes a good deck look great.
Yeah, and here's these little really small little lights as opposed to the strip light, right? So anyhow, there you go. Well, let's see if we have any questions here. It's 1:53. Some general banter in the comments here. We've got a couple friends that are chit-chatting there. Again, nice to have you guys tune in. Appreciate it. Any questions, fire away. Happy to answer it. What else do we not get into here that we should talk about? And there's so much. We don't get too technical here, I guess, but everything from your service upgrade. If you're living in a house and you've got 60 amp service, that's a problem. So you might need to upgrade your panel or your service to 100 amp. Sometimes we're upgrading to 200 amp, depending on the draw on the house and how many, appliances we're running and what it is exactly. What would you say is the most common challenge you run into on projects, Neil, as far as
Yeah, for sure. There's so many new things. The one thing I would actually just always kind of tell people is buying these electric cars is always great. What they won't tell you is that you need a 50 or a 60 or even a 70 amp circuit to feed a lot of these electric car units. So you got to have a plug in your garage. So a lot of those will kick your load demand of your house over the 100 amps that you have, and you might have to do a panel upgrade, stuff like that. So those are kind of some of the big ones where I'll get calls, and same thing. It's it's kind of the first couple questions. I'm like, how big of a what's the power draw? I guess is the biggest thing, right? Because everything adds up. With your panels, it is kind of a balanced load of 100 amps, but if you have just a 70 amp sucker right there, taking most of it, it can, there can be a little bit of a trickle down effect, unfortunately, with, installing the plug and then panel upgrade and, stuff like that. But it's, things to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes right back to that first thing we talked about today is your plan, right? You need to have a good plan, lay it all out. We got Safopedia He's asking, are these mostly cost effective from a power bill perspective? Lots of lights, lots of money? Or is this now LED so my wallet is still happy? I would say that generally speaking, it's all LED now that we put
Correct.
in. Every now and then I'll get a client who really doesn't want LED. And it's because you get into this issue where you have this very blue, very cool light that comes out from it, and not understanding that you have the option to play a bit with how your light looks. So
Totally.
I mean, incandescent has a certain look that some people like, and I get it. I have incandescent bulbs in my pergola, and I like the light that casts, but I also know that I can now get LED lighting that will cast a very similar tone of light. So
yeah, and there's a lot of these pot
very
lights
inexpensive.
now. Yeah, LEDs are fairly inexpensive nowadays.
Yeah.
They've come a really long way. Yeah, they've come a really long way. And a lot of the pot lights that we installed, they have the ability to change through a dip switch, like the color temperature. So we can actually change on the actual pot, if you want 3,000 to 5,000, 6,000 kelvins, what type of light you're really looking for. So cool features on those. There's lots of options right now when it comes to LED. So it's just kind of understanding your application is the biggest thing. Understanding, kind of what the client wants and what product would be best to fit this space, I think. So just making sure enough of the industry to give the client the best product.
Yeah, super true. I will just show some pretty pictures here while we're talking. Different projects we've done over the last couple of years. And again, you can see in this case, we've got a variety of things to consider. We've got an LED pot lighting grid. We've got pendants over an island. We've got another fixture here, that circular one in the front is going to be located directly above a table. So actually, when we laid this one out, I personally drew on the floor where the table is going to be located so we could get dead center of light fixture. And it's, again, this comes down to planning it well, so you end up with, a very, very impressive end result. And in this case, same thing, making sure you have everything that you need roughed in for your appliances. In this case, you'll see there's no range hood present. This is a downdraft unit, so it actually sucks the air out and pushes it down into the floor and out the side of the house through the floor joist or the rim joist. So there's different ways you can finish it. This one, kind of hard to tell on this image, but actually that little glass panel on the stairs, we have a LED light strip recessed in the wall above it. So that light actually shines down through the glass panel. Yeah, really cool little feature. It looks great at night. You can't see it very clearly in the day here. But so the kitchen here that we did a while back. And again, it's about how you lay out your grid, where your pendants. Again, we have on this one, we have some lighting underneath our wall-mounted shelves.
And understanding where your switching is coming from, right? Like understanding your grid layout, but like where do you want your switches? Do you want your switch to control this section, this switch to control this section? Do you want 2 locations, 3 locations? Like we can do anything, right? But these are just all detailed questions.
It's nothing more frustrating than having a light you want to control and you have to get up out of your seat and walk across a room to do it, right? So I think that, if you have we'll build movie rooms for people every now and then, or theater rooms, and it's a matter of having that switching where you can easily control, either it's on a remote, right? Or you have a dimmer or a switch that you can reach from your seat to then switch from, everyone find your seats and get everything organized to, okay, movie time. It's a quick flick of a switch and you move on from there. It's just a bathroom we did. Again, lighting, a consideration to keep when you have lots of glass, how it's going to reflect and how it's going to look. Again, bath and disadvantage lighting where, again, making sure it's centered. And with these lights, like you see these wall-mounted lights. Some of them you have to be careful because some they can only be mounted dead centered on the electrical box. And others, you can actually move along the box. So it's not quite as critical. You have that box placement perfectly centered. So beware when you're shopping for light fixtures. I would say almost always buy the one with some forgiveness, because as much as we do plan really well, every now and then there's an issue. There's a stud in the way, and now you have to either reframe the wall to find dead center, or if you have a light fixture that can accommodate that and shift over slightly, then that solves a big problem there. Again, some more bathroom shots, and shows you how lighting can really impact a space.
Mm-hmm.
Back to we saw the shot earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
all important things. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's lots more we could talk about here, but I hope it's been educational for anybody looking at a project and considering electrical changes or lighting. Neil, thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us and coming on the show.
I appreciate it. No, it's always, it was great to be on here, Paul. It's always great.
Yeah, I'll just put your information up here so that if anybody wants to track Neil down, I'll show you how to find him. So there it is, Neil King, Apex Electrical. So if you have very specific needs, electrically speaking, that doesn't require a general contractor, give Neil a call directly. You know, if you have a project in mind that's more complicated and has a lot of moving parts, multiple trades, and you need a general contractor, then you can feel free to give me a call, and you can track me down right here. So again, thanks for tuning in and watching the Art of Renovation Live. Thanks so much, Neil from Apex Electric, for joining. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with some more trips, hopefully not trips, but more so tips and advice, and help you to, navigate the renovation world and steer you clear of any landmines that might exist out there. So thanks for tuning in. Neil, thanks so much for joining. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, have a good day.